talk about what we did on the show last night. If you saw the show, if you didn't, I better explain it anyway. We had Phyllis Newman on the show. She came up with a bunch of questions. I don't know why. Such questions as, you knew some of the answers.
Flies backwards.
Yeah, she
and you
knew.
knew that.
Yeah, how much so forth and so on. It was kind of a quiz. And at the end, I said, I've got a good problem for you. And I proposed the problem, and it got so confusing. And she says, you're crazy, and you started, and I had the premise all wrong. Because it's a problem I had seen in Omni magazine about almost a year ago, last May. And we were talking about it in the office at that time, you remember? So
yes.
you had a little bit of an edge tonight. And here was the premise. 3 intelligent, are you ready? Do you like these kind of things? Yeah. Okay, all right.
Would it make any difference if they didn't? What would you do?
Go right on with it anyway. I don't know why. No, people like these kind of problems. This, I'll tell you, a fellow wrote in, I don't have his name, or I wish I did. We called the puzzle editor to Omni magazine. He gave us a version, and another fellow wrote in, and maybe Drew can get his name, and gave us the explanation of this. Here is the situation. 3 intelligent men apply for a job. Now, I said that last night. They seem equally qualified. So the prospective employer sets up a problem for them. The job, he says, will go to the first applicant to solve it. And here's what happens. Now, we're going to demonstrate this because you really have to see this in action. A hat is placed, now, in the original version, they put a spot on the forehead. But because that's a little difficult to see, we're going to use hats, okay?
Right.
A hat is placed on each man's head. The 3 are told that each has either a black hat or a red hat. And each is to raise his hand if he sees a black hat on the head of either of the other 2. In other words, I'm going to put a hat on all of you. You will not see the hat that you have. Now you'll all be together. The first one to tell what color his hat is and how he arrived at the answer gets the job. You understand the premise?
Yes.
Would you like to try it?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to use, is Tom here tonight?
Yeah.
Tommy, Doc, come on over. Now they're going to be the 3 employers. Yeah, here's the gentleman here.
Fred Collins? Greg Collins.
Yeah, this came from Greg Collins, in Los Angeles.
Now, didn't you say you wanted 3 intelligent men?
That's right.
In that case, you'll have to leave.
Now look, Manny, Mo, and Curly, let's just, now we got to do this right. This is a legitimate problem.
All right.
Now, I tell you what.
Close that monitor.
The monitor is right up here. Can we put something on front of the monitor? Because you can't cheat on this. You guys got to do this legitimately.
We'll do it right.
Cheat anyway.
There's a monitor over there. We won't look over there.
Now, you understand what I'm going to do?
That monitor right up there?
Look, there's another monitor up there hanging that he can see.
Well, we won't look.
We won't look.
We won't look.
Bobby's going to turn that one off. Now, do you understand what I'm going to do?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to go behind each of you
Put a hat on.
and put a hat on you. Now, it's either going to be a black hat or a red hat.
Right.
You're going to have to close your eyes.
Right.
Then you open your eyes and you turn and look at each other. And if you see a black hat on either of the other 2 people that you can see, you raise your hand.
Right.
You got that?
Yes.
If you can tell me what color of hat you are wearing, you must explain how you arrived at that conclusion.
And what do we get when we get this right?
You get the hat.
Oh, yeah. I need a hat.
Are you ready?
Okay.
Now, you shouldn't coach from the audience because there's an explanation for this that gets a little involved. Okay?
All right.
Okay.
Monitor's
now,
off.
Don't yell out from the audience. You guys got to close your eyes. Now, if you look up and see the hat, that's cheating. You understand?
Yeah.
Okay. And you can't reach up and touch it, and you can't peek at it. Now, keep your eyes closed. Now, when you open your eyes, raise your hand if you see either of the other persons wearing a black hat. Okay, guys? Now, the first person that can tell me the color of their hat they're wearing and explain how they arrived at that gets the job. Okay? All right, let Doc go first.
There has to be one person who's wearing a red hat.
You're either wearing a red or a black hat.
Right. Well, I see 2 black hats, and I figure one of them's got to be red, so it must be mine.
No, that's not true. I didn't say you were wearing a red hat. You are wearing either a red or a black hat.
What do you think, Tom?
One of us has got a black hat on.
By the way, Tom, I like your hat.
Thank you. I think it's your hat, too.
Now, does anybody...
Yeah, my hat is black.
How do you know?
Because Doc just said it was.
That's not the way to deduct it. If somebody tells you it's black...
What's the difference?
What do you mean, what's the difference?
We solved
He
it.
solved it, didn't he? Give the
Did you
man...
tell him he had a black hat?
No, I didn't tell him. Yes,
Yes,
I
he
did.
did. He looks.
I said he's got a black hat.
You're
and
not
he's-
supposed to tell him he has a
But you
black
didn't
hat.
tell
I have a black hat.
All I said was you to raise your hand if you see anybody else wearing a black hat.
He said-
You're not supposed to say you got a black hat.
I've got a black hat.
What?
I've got a black
How
hat.
do you know you got a black
Because he said I see two black hats.
You're not supposed to say that.
But you didn't say
I did too say that.
So we all have black
I
hats?
said, I'm going to repeat it. Each is to raise his hand if he sees a black hat on the head of either of the other
All right,
two.
let's do it
That's
again.
what I
Let's
said.
do it again. All right, now. What color is your hat?
I still say my hat, well, I figured it was red.
All right, now you're wrong.
Now he knows what color his hat is.
Well, he told Nutsy over there what color his hat
Do it
was.
again. What color is your hat?
My hat is black.
No, he got it right.
All right, you say your hat is black.
Well, I know it because you just told me.
I had this all worked out. I knew this was going to be a disaster when I said, let's use Tommy, Doc, and Ed. I knew we were in trouble.
What is the explanation? What is the deduction?
Now that you know,
Yeah.
you know that you're wearing what color?
Black hat.
And you know that you're wearing what? And you know you're wearing black.
Well, we all raised our hands, right?
That's right. Because you saw a black hat on
one.
on any other person, you raise your hand.
True.
The first guy to explain what color of hat he is wearing and explains how he found that out gets the job.
Okay.
For example, if you say you were wearing a black hat, how do you know you're wearing a black hat, Doc?
Well, I
happens to be
knew
the
it
correct
before because of all of the simus that went on.
I'm not talking about somebody told you.
Oh, I don't know.
Would you like to
But I
explain
figured
that?
this way, I'd take a shot at it. Maybe I'd get the job. What have I got to lose?
You got a 50-50 chance. Maybe I explained this wrong. All right, now you all know that you got black hats
Can we
on.
take our hats off?
You can take the hats off.
I kind of like mine.
You know you all... But suppose one... How would you... Now you explain.
No, I thought I had it last night. I don't have it now because it's one black hat. I thought the guy saw two black hats.
Well, you
Then he knew,
all
yeah,
see two black
yeah.
hats. But how would you know that you had a black hat?
I
The
don't
way
know.
this originally worked out, the men went into the room. They all raised their hands because they saw a black hat on the other person. There was a pause, and finally one guy says, I am wearing a black hat. And he was right, and he got the job. But how did he figure out he was wearing the black hat? That's the...
Well, I know that answer.
Okay,
Because these two people raised their hands. They both saw black hats.
so did you.
But they saw one on my head.
Well, sure they saw one in your head, but how do you know you've got a black hat?
Well, they wouldn't lie.
Well, he saw his, though. You only have to see it on one other person. A black hat. You don't have to see two black hats. Just
All
a
right,
black
you've
hat.
kept us in suspense long enough.
See, he saw his black hat. Ed saw you two.
Yeah.
You two. Tommy saw Ed and Doc.
Right.
Doc saw Tommy and you. Now, how did you know? Okay, you want the explanation?
Please, yes.
It is interesting. Okay. Each man raises his hand, and after a few seconds, one man gets the answer. What color and how? All the men have the same information, right, when you come into the room. However, the very smart guy has to reason out what the other applicants are thinking. Since all three gentlemen raised their hands, and he can see the other two have black hats on their heads, there are only two possibilities. See, because if there were two red hats, what would happen?
Well, someone would raise their
One
hand,
guy
yeah.
wouldn't raise his hand.
Right.
Okay, so there can only be one red hat, or they have to be all black hats, do they not?
Yes.
Okay. Ah, okay.
Yeah. This is the part we've been waiting for, guys. Wait a minute. Lean in.
There couldn't have been 2 red hats, but because all 3 men raised their hands. The smart guy decides to assume his hat is red, just for the sake of the argument. He pretends he's got a red hat.
Right.
If his hat is red, the other 2 men would have seen only 1 red hat and 1 black hat, and instantly deduced that they had the black hat on. Since this solution did not occur at all, the men must have seen only black hats.
Wait a minute. Would you go back to when they're coming in the room?
Let me explain it. It makes perfectly good sense. All right, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Can I take your place and you want to sit back here?
Sure.
This is an interesting format. We all come into the room. I went nuts with this last night. I saw this a year ago, and we got so mixed up we thought we were all crazy. We all come into the room. Neither one of us know. All right, we all come into the room, all right? Now, I'm going to play the guy who is supposed to be intelligent. Just for the That didn't come out right. Okay, here we go. We come into the room. If you see a black hat on either of the other 2 people, you raise your hand. We come in. Now we look at each other. Now I see 2 black hats. Tommy sees 2 black hats, and you see 2 black hats.
Black hats.
So what this guy does, he says to himself, for the purposes of figuring this out, I'm going to assume that I'm wearing a red hat. He doesn't know, but he's just, okay? Now, just for the sake of illustrating that, suppose he was really wearing a red hat.
You look like Pinky Lee.
All right. We got our hands up. If I was wearing a red hat, Tommy would see a red hat and a black hat. Would he not?
Right.
Yes.
You would see a red hat and a black hat.
Right.
Therefore, you would know, since if I was wearing a red hat, you could only be seeing his hat. If, in fact, I did have a red hat. And you could only see his black hat because I'm assuming I have a red one on. Do you understand that?
Right.
Therefore, you should say, I'm wearing a black hat. Since neither one of the fellows said that, this guy knows that he wears the black hat.
I got it.
Does he understand it? You understand? Now, if you don't say so, it is kind of confusing.
No, I really don't. No, you're last.
Suppose I had a red hat on.
Yeah, you've got a red hat.
What would you see?
You
would see 1 red hat and 1 black hat.
Yes.
You'd raise your hand because you saw his black hat.
Yeah.
What would Tommy see? His hand's raised also. I'm assuming for the sake of the argument I have a red hat on, which I really don't, but I'm assuming it is. He would raise his hand. If I had a red hat on, he would know immediately that he has the black hat. Because you've got your hand raised, and if I have a red hat, you wouldn't have your hand raised for my hat. You'd have to raise for his hat.
Don't get mad about it.
Oh, I'm not bad. Is that explanation clear?
I'll be back with my first guest in just a moment. Please stay tuned. We have a wonderful show for you tonight.
Wonderful puzzle. We'll be right back.
It's nice over here.
Thank you.